Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The Georgia Bulldogs continue to roll in the 2024 high school recruiting trail, landing four-star offensive tackle from the state of Texas, Michael Uini. This guy is big, but he's also athletic. We're going to talk a little bit about what he's going to bring to this team. We're going to talk a little bit about, can this Georgia class have that number one recruiting class, not just in the 2024 cycle, but could this be one of the best classes that we've ever seen in the modern day recruiting era? And again, this one hurts a little bit, right? I'm a Michigan fan. Many of you guys know that. He was considered a Michigan lean for a decent amount of this process. Goes on that official visit to Georgia June 23rd. And then you hear Wednesday night that it seems like Georgia is rolling with this commitment and they land it Friday. And you got to have the conversation. And I think this might upset some Michigan fans that are listening. And I know we have the Joe Moore Award trophy for the last 2 years. You're talking about the best offensive line in the country. And even as a Michigan fan, it's got to be Georgia, right? And I'm just going off the dome the last couple of years. Jamari Salyer, he was a guy I loved in the draft process. He's starting offensive lineman in the NFL. You take a look at last year, Broderick Jones, Warren McClendon. You take a look at this year and who they're going to put out into the 2024 NFL draft. Marius Mims might be the first tackle taken off the board. Cedric Van Pran might have been the best center in last year's draft. He's coming back, probably the best center in college football. Tate Ratledge, when healthy, he's a day 2 pick. Xavier Truss, the talent that Georgia has been able to develop on the offensive line, and shout out Stacey Searles doing a phenomenal job. It's absolutely insane. And if there is one program that really kind of swings a big sword when it comes to recruiting these guys on the offensive line, it's certainly the Georgia Bulldogs. And you can't really fault Michael Uini for wanting to take his talents there because they're checking off all the boxes with these kids, right? You want to win a national championship. You want to win an SEC championship, you go to Georgia. You want to go to the NFL, you go to Georgia. And so Michael Uini committing to Georgia, a very, very big get for the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, before we get into it, just want to say shout out to you guys. You guys have been absolutely awesome, especially Georgia fans, whether we're talking Chauncey Bowens, whether we're going back and talking Dylan Raiola. You guys have shown a ton of love and support to the boys. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. It's going to be a very busy month of July with all these commitments. We're going to do our best to cover all of these guys. Without further ado, though, let's get into Michael Uini. And then we're going to talk about some of these top targets for the Georgia Bulldogs in this 2024 class. They're sitting at that number one spot already, and they got a bunch of blue chippers that they're still going after. But Michael Uini, when you get into the film, what's most impressive is how he carries the weight, right? You're looking at someone 6'7", 290 pounds, probably closer to 300, carries the weight extremely well. Phenomenal athlete for his size, right? You get into the film, and what he can do is he's a guy that's really good in pass protection when you're asking him to play in space. What's even more impressive is how he gets off the line of scrimmage and how well he works up to the second level, picking up linebackers as well, right? A little quick double team, gets to a linebacker and puts him in the dirt. One other thing you're going to see, though, and excuse me, this is probably something that Georgia just absolutely loves. Like, this dude is about as nasty as it gets. Like, he wants to put people on the turf, and a guy that has dummy power in his hands. And I kind of see him kind of like a ball of clay. Like, he's not going to come in and start right away for Georgia. Not many of those 5-stars do, but they do a phenomenal job developing those guys. You take a look at a guy in Marius Mims, who he played a lot last year, but we're talking about a top 10 pick that a lot of people are projecting and hasn't even really started at the college football level yet. And why is that? Because they know he's developed, and you wanted to build an offensive tackle in a laboratory. Guys like Marius Mims, Michael Uini, that's what you want, right? 6'7", really good frame, phenomenal athlete. Georgia got a really big one here. And you take a look at who else they're trending for specifically on this offensive line. Daniel Calhoun, 6'7", 335 pounds. Marquise Easley, 6'4", 345 pounds. Nair Daniels, 6'7", 371 pounds. Georgia's going after these big physical guys who have the ideal frame. You get them into that program, you get their weight right, you get them to that playing athleticism, and you're looking at 4 guys, if they can land all 4 of these guys, that are all-American bodies. Like, you can't argue that these guys have the frame and athleticism to be all-Americans at the college football level. Georgia continuing to build in the trenches. And again, even as a Michigan fan, like, I know we've had a great offensive line, Georgia Bulldogs, as much as people want to talk about their defense and how dominant their defensive line has been, this offensive line has been one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country, for the last couple of years as well. And you're looking at what this 2024 class looks like. You already have your quarterback in Dylan Raiola, who transferring to Buford. He's going to be playing with guys like KJ Bolden. That might help a little bit. But when you have that number one quarterback in your class, kind of like what Arch Manning was for Texas last year, it's like a gravitational pull. Like people want to go play for these marquee players, but it rounds out extremely well. Like the depth of this class, although this is going to sound crazy to Georgia fans, maybe it lacks like that top 20, top 50 talent, although they got like 6 guys in the top 50. They're still trending for a couple more, but the depth of this class is what you're really, really pleased about if you're a Georgia fan. And it's really complete, and they're filling out this offensive line. They got the guys on defense. They got some really interesting playmakers. Dwight Phillips and Chauncey Bones is a very interesting running back room. Natarian Tuggle is a guy that, if Georgia fans not familiar, he's transferring down to IMG for his senior year. He's a guy that I think we're talking about like a top 100 national player when it's all said and done. When these recruiting rankings are finalized, he's got some serious juice when it comes to just being an athlete. I would expect him to be talking maybe not 5-star range, but we're definitely talking about a top 100 player nationally. But what's even more exciting for Georgia is you taking a look at the talent that they've had on campus in June, and that's what it gets to when you're Georgia is just if Kirby Smart, Mike Bobo, Glenn Schumann, Will Muschamp, when they pick up the phone and call these recruits, these kids are answering and these kids are taking visits. Like you are out of your mind really to not give Georgia a look. And looking at who they've had on campus, Justin Williams, 5-star backer, Brandon Baker's another, like I could see them going with Brandon Baker with all these offensive linemen in the boat. He's not a must, but he's a guy that he's certainly looking at Georgia. Some guys that it does seem are trending Georgia's way. Joseph Jonah, an Oklahoma lean for a really long time. But again, it gets to that defensive line and the track record Georgia has with these dudes. That's where these guys want to go play. You're going to go to the NFL if you go to Georgia and play on that defensive line. Going down the list, Aiden Breland and LJ McCray, 2 guys that I know Florida schools are recruiting hard. Aiden Breland's getting recruited hard by Oregon and Dan Lanning. It's really hard to discount or count Georgia out for top defensive linemen in these classes because of their track record. Christopher Jones, top 125 nationally ranked linebacker. He's trending to Georgia. And then you get into the offensive lineman, Nair Daniels from the state of New Jersey, Bergen Catholic. He's trending to Georgia. This could be kind of a crazy class. And what I want to get into a little bit more is this Friday, June 9th visit. KJ Bolden getting a lot of buzz to Georgia. And that's, again, a guy that's a top 10 nationally ranked player. He's going to play on the offensive side of the ball in high school with Dylan Raiola. I could see that certainly helping. Right? KJ Bolden's going to play safety when he gets to the next level at college, but he's a guy that plays both sides of the ball at Buford. I could see him and Dylan Raiola really getting a good connection. And again, you talk about that gravitational pull. These guys want to go play for the top quarterback in the country. KJ Bolden, Mike Matthews, again, it gets easy to recruit top talent on the offensive side of the ball when you have Dylan Raiola in the fold because these guys know who they're going to be throwing to. Edric Houston seems to be an Ohio State lean, but again, the longer that plays out, he's an in-state kid on the defensive line. Could certainly see Georgia in the mix. And I guess that's kind of the storyline of this Georgia class is they're just in the mix for everybody, right? Williams Nwaneri is a guy that Georgia's turned up the heat on, the number 1 defensive lineman in the 2024 class. And again, when Georgia decides to turn up the heat on you, it's really hard to say no to their track record, winning SEC titles, winning national championships, putting guys into the NFL. They're checking all the boxes. Apparently, from what I've read, they're really impressed. When they get a chance to go watch the spring practices, really, really impressed with just how things are run from a football standpoint by Kirby Smart. This is going to be a very exciting next couple of weeks for the Georgia Bulldogs. And again, we're talking about maybe the best class that we've ever seen. And that's coming off 2 straight national titles. The Georgia Bulldogs simply firing on all cylinders. And yes, I mean, as a Michigan fan, this one hurts, but it's really hard to fault kids for deciding to go play for the Georgia Bulldogs and all the success that they've had over the last couple of years. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, Georgia fans. I think we're going to have a lot more updates in the month of July. So if you do enjoy it, you enjoy the updates, you enjoy digging into these players, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.